The ReTurn 7500 is a uniquely designed stand aid used for short transfers and ideal where space is limited. Patients should be able to stand, bear weight, and have upper body and arm strength to pull themselves to a standing position. The ReTurn 7500 is the perfect solution for patients that may have unpredictable balance and ability to stand for extended periods of time. The ReTurn 7500 can be used to transfer to and from chair, toilet, bed, wheelchair, and car. The ReTurn can be used for several other tasks such as assessment of functional weight bearing, patient activity tolerance, as well as a mobile exercise station. Patients who are preparing to return home from the hospital, nursing home, or her rehabilitation facility can use the ReTurn 7500 for social reintegration purposes such as washing dishes, applying makeup, brushing teeth, shaving, and other activities of daily living. The ideal patient for the ReTurn can bear weight, lean forward, and compensate for weak legs with their upper body strength. The ReTurn 7500 consists of two parts and is assembled without tools. Put the red ladder on the base so that the height adjustable knobs are facing the curved side of the base. Now, use the wing screws to fasten and tighten the ladder to the base. Turn the shin supports towards the heel marks on the base. Now the ReTurn is ready for use. Before using the ReTurn, all operators should carefully study and understand the instruction guides for both the lift and accessories, as well as complete the ReTurn competency checklist. In addition, the patient care plan should be reviewed for patient's activity level and any contraindications for using a stand aid transfer device. Assure that the stand aid transfer device and accessories are in full compliance with the patient care plan. The ReTurn is very stable because of its unique base design with 6 wheels, 4 of which are swivel wheels, allowing the ReTurn to turn and maneuver in its own space. The ReTurn has a braking system on the 2 outer wheels that will inhibit movement. To lock the brakes, push down with your foot on the red dot on the brake pedal. This has to be done on both sides. Then validate that the brakes have been engaged. There is a cutout in the base, which allows the ReTurn to fit around the base of a toilet. The overall base shape also fits inside the wheels of a standard wheelchair. The base of the ReTurn easily fits through a standard door. On the base, there is a curved frame where you can place your foot if counterbalance is needed. The shin supports can easily be adjusted up and down by pulling the knobs and adjusting the shin supports. Generally, the shin supports should be positioned just below the patient's kneecaps. When necessary, the shin supports can also be adjusted side to side to narrow or widen the space between the knees. However, please refer to the patient's care plan as they may need to be adjusted lower in some cases. If it is contraindicated for the patient to bear weight on one of their legs, or if the patient's leg is in a splint or immobilized with a cast, then the shin pads can be rotated around for the leg to be supported in an outstretched position. If this is the case, simply lower the shin supports all the way to the lowest setting and rotate the necessary shin support over. When pulling the ReTurn up to the patient for use, extend the leg that cannot bear weight and help guide the back of their calf onto the rotated shin support to rest. Once the ReTurn is in the proper place, adjust the height of the shin supports up just below the kneecap of the leg that can bear weight. The ReTurn can also be used for treatments to the feet or for applying support stockings. By resting a leg on the rotated shin support, the caregiver is enabled to safely and easily attend to the various aspects of the foot care. Now we will demonstrate the various ways to use the ReTurn 7500. This patient is active and quite strong, but has a problem with balance and walking. The ReTurn will be used to transfer the patient from the side of the bed to a commode. This process may be used when transferring from any seated position to another seated position. When there is a risk that the patient might fall during the transfer, use a ReTurn belt. If there is no risk, go ahead and use the ReTurn without a ReTurn belt. Now, ask the patient to find a comfortable grip using the vertical and horizontal handles provided to pull themselves up. When the patient has a good standing position, transfer them to the commode and let them sit down. For a risk patient, let's start by placing the ReTurn belt on the patient with the arrow upwards while in a seated position. Place the ReTurn belt behind the patient, straddling the buttocks as low as possible. Secure the return belt around the front of the patient using the Velcro strap, and let the strap with the buckle hang down unconnected. If the patient is weak, the caregiver will stand to the side of the return with one foot on the base and grasp the return belt handle to assist the patient to a standing position. Connect the return belt safety strap around the center vertical hand grip of the return. Connect the buckle, and when you hear it click, test the buckle by pulling it to make sure that it is safely connected. Now, move the patient to the desired seating position. Hard floor or short, soft carpets will work best. When you help a patient to the toilet or commode, move as close as possible and then apply the brakes. Now, the patient can undress themselves, or you may assist them as needed. Before sitting the patient down, release the safety strap. Do not do this when the strap is tight, as the patient could fall backwards. Always start by helping the patient forward by pulling in on the handles of the return belt. When the strap is not tight, open the buckle and slowly help the patient to a seated position. Take off the return belt before the patient lets go of the handles on the return. Some patients may require that you stay with them. If not, remove the return as you give the patient privacy. Another application of the return is helping someone move back in their chair from a slouching position. Position the return in front of the chair and ask the patient to place their feet on the base. Ask the patient to pull themselves up so that they are not touching the seat. Next, push the return towards the chair with your foot, repositioning the patient's buttocks completely back in the seat of the chair. Additional benefits of the ReTurn 7500 are functional weight-bearing testing and the ability to exercise at the bedside. The ReTurn 7500 offers a safe way to test patients for their ability to bear weight and balance. There are 5 parts to the functional weight-bearing test. These are standing, leaning sideways, lifting heel, lifting foot, and time. We will begin the functional weight-bearing test with the standing assessment. Here we will test the patient's ability to stand in a safe, controlled environment. Always put the brakes on during this test. Have the patient find a comfortable grip on the frame and ask the patient to stand up. If they can, then proceed to the leaning sideways test. When walking, you naturally lean from side to side to be able to move your feet one at a time. This test assesses balance and capability to lean sideways when lifting your feet to walk. Ask the patient to lean from side to side. If this is okay, go to the next test for lifting heels. If there is any risk that the patient might fall while leaning sideways to perform the previous test, use the return belt for safety and support. When walking, we lift the heel before taking each step. In this test, we will assess the patient's ability to lift their heel to take a step. Ask the patient to lift their heels, left, right, left. If they can, then proceed to the lifting foot test. In this test, we will assess the patient's ability to lift each foot. Ask the patient to lift their feet, left, right, left. If they can, then proceed to the time test. Now for the final test, we want to determine how much time the patient is able to bear weight. This test is very important and not only assesses the patient's strength and ability to bear weight, but their endurance as well. This will help determine the patient's ability to walk for a certain duration of time. In this test, we will assess the maximum time that they are able to stand and bear weight. This will save time from transporting and provides the patient with a familiar environment to exercise within. Some patients are unpredictable and may step back off the return base. The heel strap is an accessory that is used to safely keep the patients on the base of the return. Do not use the heel strap without using the return belt. For safe and trouble-free use of the ReTurn 7500, there are some routine procedures that should be performed prior to each use. Before use, check that the red ladder is safely attached to the base. Check the 2 bolts. Check that the brakes work. Check that the return belt is not damaged or worn. It is important to never leave the patient unattended when on the return. Never leave the return in reach of a patient while the patient is unattended. Patients must be able to follow simple instructions, not be confused or combative when using the return. it is important for the patient to maintain a grip on the return at all times. The return must be counterbalanced and controlled by staff at all times. Apply brakes when it is important that the return is not moving. Before you start to move the patient in the return, they must be within the circle of the 6 wheels. If there is any risk that the patient will fall or move outside this circle, a return belt has to be used and safely attached to the return. Always read the ReTurn 7500 user's manual thoroughly prior to use. If the return wheels are difficult to move or rotate, then check the wheels for dirt and hair. If the latter moves when the patient pulls to a standing position, then check to see that the bolts are secured tightly to the base. For all other troubleshooting concerns, contact your maintenance or biomed department. If not available, contact your local distributor or call the System Romedic National Service Center at 866-276-5438 or by email at customerservice.usa@handicare.com or info.usa@handicare.com. Routine cleaning of the ReTurn 7500 should be done with common surface disinfectants such as a water-based ammonia compound or quaternary compound. Do not use products containing phenyl or chlorine since the parts may be damaged. Assure that all wheels are free of dirt and hair. Regularly check that the bolts connecting the red ladder to the base are tight. Regularly check that the brakes are working. Regularly check the product for damage. If you have any questions or comments, please consult your local distributor or System Romedic specialist. The return should be thoroughly inspected and serviced when needed, and at least once per year. Pay particular attention to parts that show wear, such as joints, bolts, welds, and wheels. Service must be carried out according to the System Romedic Service Manual and by authorized staff. Repairs and maintenance may only be done by trained and certified personnel using original parts. When storing, keep the return at a temperature above freezing and at a relative humidity of no more than 60%. Taking the time to remember these simple procedures will pay off in years of safe and comfortable lifting for you and those you care for. If you have any questions or comments, please consult your local distributor or System Romedic specialist.